Royal vaults still hide necklaces capable of eclipsing an entire evening gown. Huge sapphires, heavy pendants, multi-layered diamond garlands. These masterpieces were created for an era when palace life itself was a theater. But times have changed, and today the main problem with such historical necklaces is not even their weight, but the fact that the modern world simply doesn't know how to wear them. Some queens tried to save these jewels by masterfully altering and lightening them. Others preferred to lock them away in vaults forever. And some jewelry giants completely disappeared along with the empires they once belonged to. Yet, looking at these massive masterpieces, I ask myself every time, is their era really over? Or have we just forgotten how to wear such luxury? Let's look into the royal vaults and decide together. And make sure to watch until the end, because later I will show you a massive masterpiece that was secretly smuggled across borders inside a child's plush toy, and another that was audaciously stolen from the Louvre just recently. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. Sometimes a piece of jewelry sits in a vault for decades, simply because finding the right occasion for it is nearly impossible. In 1954, during a 6-month Commonwealth tour, the young Queen Elizabeth II attended a state banquet in Adelaide, Australia. There, she was presented with a truly astonishing gift from the local government and people, a diamond necklace set with the spectacular Andamuka opal. Discovered just a few years earlier, this fiery white stone weighed a staggering 203 carats and was considered the finest of its kind ever found in Australia. The suite, crafted in 18-karat palladium and set with 180 diamonds, also included a pair of matching drop earrings. But all eyes were inevitably drawn to that one monumental centerpiece. The very next evening, at a royal music festival at the Wayville Oval, the Queen wore the piece paired with Queen Mary's lover's knot tiara. It was a lovely gesture of respect to her hosts, but looking at the photographs, the styling dilemma becomes instantly clear. The challenge isn't just the sheer weight of the stone, but its highly unorthodox design. You have this rather delicate, intricate diamond framework, and suspended right in the center is an enormous, solid expanse of opal that feels strikingly out of proportion with the rest of the necklace. And then there is another thought that always crosses my mind with opals specifically. We so often hear about how delicate these stones can be, vulnerable to cracks, temperature changes, and accidental damage. And here we are, looking at a colossal 203-karat opal hanging at the center of a state necklace. Perhaps wearing such a jewel regularly was not only difficult stylistically, but also rather risky. One awkward movement, one unfortunate knock during a crowded royal engagement, and the consequences for such a legendary stone could have been catastrophic. I always wonder how much time royal dressers spend trying to balance such a colossal focal gem with an elegant evening gown so that the jewelry doesn't completely overpower the wearer. It is an incredibly difficult piece to pull off naturally. Perhaps that is exactly why the Adelaide concert was the first and last time the Andamuka opal necklace was ever worn in public. Since then, it has quietly rested in the vault, occasionally making an appearance in museum displays. We see this same highly practical approach with gifts given much more recently. When Charles and Camilla undertook official tours to the Middle East, they received some truly dazzling diplomatic presents. Following a 2006 visit to Saudi Arabia, the royal family gifted Camilla 3 magnificent demi-parures. The ruby and diamond suite from that collection made its debut in January 2007, when the couple attended a concert celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Philadelphia Academy of Music. Camilla wore a dark red velvet gown that perfectly complemented the necklace, which looks almost like a bejeweled breastplate. It is a stunning architectural piece featuring 37 oval mixed-cut rubies and over 100 carats of diamonds. Then, after another tour to the Middle East in 2013, King Abdullah presented her with yet another ruby and diamond suite. She wore this second necklace, featuring pear-shaped rubies in a slightly more floral, romantic setting, to a film premiere in London in 2015. again pairing it with a dark red velvet evening gown. I find this pattern quite telling. We all know that Camilla is actually wonderful at carrying off massive jewelry. Large gemstones rarely overpower her. Yet, even she couldn't seem to find a permanent place for these highly unusual, armor-like necklaces in her wardrobe. She did, however, clearly take a liking to the ruby clip earrings from these sets. Unlike the heavy necklaces, we actually see her wearing the earrings from time to time, beautifully pairing them with the Burmese ruby tiara. It makes me wonder, what do you think of these ruby necklaces? Do you have any ideas on how and with what they could be worn today? Or perhaps these pieces should be completely reimagined and redesigned. In the end, there are no strict rules against altering royal jewels. We have seen royal women rework diplomatic gifts to suit their own tastes many times before. Just look at how both Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana famously adapted their own sapphire suites. I have to admit, it's much easier to imagine redesigning a modern gift than completely dismantling a century-old family heirloom. Let's step back into 1901. Queen Mary, who was then the Princess of Wales, commissioned the Love Trophy Collar. Crafted using diamonds that belonged to her grandmother and her aunt, it features 7 rectangular panels designed in the Louis XVI style. Each panel displays an amatory trophy, a burning torch, a quiver of arrows, and a bow, all surrounded by a laurel wreath and suspended from a diamond ribbon. Queen Mary wore it flawlessly. Her famously upright posture and the high-necked fashions of the Edwardian era made this incredibly dense piece look entirely natural on her. But fashion moved on, and so did the tolerance for such rigidity. When she passed the collar to her daughter-in-law, the Queen Mother, in the 1930s, it vanished from public view. Queen Elizabeth II inherited it in 2002, and she too left it safely in the vault. It is not hard to see why. It is essentially a jeweled cage. I often think about how utterly torturous it must be to wear something that completely envelops your neck, rubbing against your skin, and preventing you from relaxing for even a single second during a long evening. I certainly wouldn't want to be locked into such splendor for hours on end. Yet, I have to confess, I still catch myself dreaming that the current Princess of Wales might give it a second life. With her long neck and her preference for very clean, simple silhouettes, she might be the only modern royal who could pull it off. Until then, it remains a beautiful, untouched relic of a much stiffer era. I also want to show you a piece from the Swedish royal collection that presents a completely different kind of styling puzzle. Created by the Frankfurt jeweler Koch in 1905, the Connert scarab necklace was a wedding gift to Princess Margaret from her new Swedish parents-in-law. The design was deeply sentimental, meant to commemorate the couple's romantic courtship and engagement in Cairo. It consists of 5 rows of seed pearls suspending large cabochon scarabs of ruby, sapphire, and emerald, each topped with a diamond M. It is a necklace that sharply divides opinion. It completely lacks the classic, uniform brilliance we usually expect from royal diamonds. With its mix of muted cabochon colors and delicate seed pearls, it has an almost eccentric, artsy quality that makes it notoriously difficult to style. How do you even wear a piece with such a busy, unusual motif today? I have seen so many debates about this among jewelry lovers. Some suggest it demands a high-necked, dark velvet gown to make the colors pop, while others propose wearing it cascading down the back of a backless dress for a modern twist. It is a genuine styling dilemma. For decades, this quirky piece found its perfect champion in Princess Lilian. She wore it beautifully, often pairing it with her laurel wreath tiara for white tie events, fully embracing its romantic history. But when she passed away in 2013, she bequeathed the necklace to Queen Sylvia, and we have not seen it since. It seems Queen Sylvia's taste is far too traditional for such a controversial, deeply personal piece. It sits in the dark, waiting for someone brave enough to solve its styling puzzle. The issue of a heavy, overwhelming necklace is certainly not a new one, and the Habsburg sapphire parure is a brilliant example of late 19th century problem-solving. The design is breathtaking, featuring intricate bows, foliate swags, and delicate fleur-de-lis motifs. but even 19th century jewelers understood that such grandeur came at a price. The necklace was designed with hidden fittings and hinges so it could be dismantled into lighter sections. An ingenious solution for a jewel that was simply too monumental to wear comfortably as a single piece. Today, this kind of versatility is exactly what modern royal women rely on. It is so much easier to elegantly pin a historic sapphire brooch to a jacket or clasp a brilliant bracelet onto your wrist than to figure out how to carry an entire, heavily ornate necklace without it taking over your entire look. There is a persistent, fascinating rumor attached to these stones. Because the suite features both the French fleur-de-lis and the Florentine lily, jewelry historians believe these gems might have originally belonged to Empress Marie-Louise of France, the second wife of Napoleon, who was born a Habsburg. After the collapse of the French Empire, she returned to Austria, leaving her personal jewels in the royal palace. The setting we see today was likely created after her death using her stones, keeping the imperial connection alive. In 2012, this incredible suite was sold at auction in Geneva, and sadly, its current whereabouts remain unknown. There is another piece I want to show you that completely changes how we think about heavy antique jewelry. It is a diamond necklace so incredibly flexible that you can literally wrap it around your neck just like a scarf. And the diamonds themselves are far from ordinary. This is the Marquess of Anglesy's diamond tassel necklace. This late 18th century Georgian piece is technically a negligee necklace, weighing approximately 300 carats and set entirely with old mine brilliant cut diamonds. The stones are believed to have been sourced from the legendary Golconda mines in India, known for producing the purest diamonds in the world. But according to family legend, some of these exceptional stones may have a much darker history. They are said to have come from the infamous dismantled Boehmer and Bassenge necklace. That was the very jewel at the center of the affair of the diamond necklace, the scandalous fraud that severely damaged Marie Antoinette's reputation. The necklace eventually belonged to the 5th Marquess of Anglesey, an incredibly flamboyant man who wore this fortune in diamonds over his elaborate costumes until his extravagant lifestyle led to bankruptcy in 1904. The jewel managed to stay in the family, and the way the women of the house styled it in the 20th century truly stands out. If you look at Lady Marjorie Manners in her glamorous 1937 coronation portrait by Cecil Beaton, you will see she simply draped this massive antique piece casually over her shoulders, letting the heavy diamond tassels hang down the front of her gown. But the real display of this necklace's flexibility happened a few years later. At the 1953 coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, Shirley Vaughan, the 7th Marchioness of Anglesey, took this piece of history and actually knotted it around her neck. To me, this has to be one of the most unusual ways to wear historic diamonds, treating a 300-carat antique masterpiece like a literal silk scarf. This incredible necklace survived intact for decades after that and was recently sold at auction in 2024 for a staggering $4.8 million. Let's step away from European queens for a moment, because the next piece I want to show you was actually created for a man. Today, most male royals appear in little more than orders, medals, or cufflinks, so it can feel almost surreal to look back at the era of the Indian Maharajas. Their ceremonial jewels were created on an entirely different scale. In 1928, the Maharaja of Patiala commissioned Cartier to create an enormous diamond necklace that covered nearly his entire chest. The story goes that in 1925, the Maharaja traveled to Paris with approximately 20 trunks filled with the highest quality precious stones, protected by his own security guards. He asked Cartier to reset them, and the result was the Patiala necklace. Containing 2,930 diamonds, an assortment of Burmese rubies, and centered around the spectacular 234-carat yellow De Beers diamond, the 7th largest diamond in the world, the scale of this piece is simply breathtaking. On an Eastern ruler like Sir Bhupinder Singh, this colossal size looked completely organic. It was a direct, unapologetic symbol of absolute male power and wealth. The necklace mysteriously disappeared from the royal treasury around 1948, and for decades it was thought to be lost forever. Then, in 1998, a Cartier associate stumbled upon fragments of the necklace in a second-hand jewelry shop in London. Cartier purchased whatever pieces they could find and spent years painstakingly restoring it, replacing the missing stones with replicas to recreate its historic grandeur. We recently saw a glimpse of this history when Emma Chamberlain wore the intact, original diamond choker portion of the Patiala set to the Met Gala. But the original, full necklace in all its heavy, multi-tiered glory is a true relic of a bygone era. It is a kind of magnificent, imposing jewelry that we can now only really imagine seeing behind the glass of a museum exhibition, a stunning reminder of a time when scale and splendor knew no bounds. It takes a very specific kind of confidence to alter a historical masterpiece, but sometimes it is the only way to save magnificent stones from being entirely forgotten. The Swedish royal vaults hold a perfect example of this practical ingenuity. The Napoleonic amethyst parure is said to trace its origins all the way back to the imperial court of Napoleon Bonaparte in early 19th century France. According to history, the original owner was Empress Josephine, who reportedly gave the suite as an 1806 wedding gift to her new daughter-in-law, Princess Augusta of Bavaria. Eventually, the amethysts were passed to Augusta's daughter, Princess Josephine of Leutenburg, who brought them to Sweden when she married the future King Oscar I. The original demi-parure was incredibly imposing. It featured massive, deep purple, faceted amethysts set in gold, surrounded by clusters of white diamonds set in silver. The set included drop earrings, 2 bracelets, a large corsage brooch, and a monumental necklace. For generations, Swedish queens faithfully wore the necklace just as it was designed. Queen Louise, the second wife of King Gustav VI Adolf, was particularly fond of it. For instance, she wore these very amethysts during a 1956 British state visit to Stockholm at the Royal Opera House. But when Queen Sylvia joined the royal family in 1976, she looked at this historical demi-parure with fresh eyes. To her, the necklace felt just a bit too massive and bulky to wear comfortably around the neck, and she also realized that the set was missing a matching headpiece. She came up with a simply brilliant idea. She had the heavy necklace mounted onto a rigid frame, transforming it into a spectacular circlet tiara, and thereby creating a fully complete amethyst parure. To ensure the set still included a necklace, she had the 2 original bracelets linked together to form a new, much lighter piece. And because the tiara conversion required removing 1 amethyst cluster, that extra element is now cleverly used as a separate brooch or a hair ornament. It turned out to be an absolutely fantastic styling decision, and one that the rest of the family clearly appreciated. Today, this regal purple halo is frequently and beautifully worn not just by Queen Sylvia, but also by Crown Princess Victoria, Princess Madeline, and the King's sisters, who all seem to love wearing this former necklace exactly as a tiara. We see this same highly pragmatic approach with another prominent European royal family, though their solution was even more fearless. In 1901, when Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands married, she received an astonishing wedding gift from the Dutch people. It was a magnificent sapphire and diamond parure created by J.A. Hoyding, containing over 800 spectacular diamonds and sapphires. The set included a massive tiara, a mirrored necklace, and a pair of bracelets. Queen Wilhelmina wore the full parure for several grand portraits over the decades, celebrating milestones like the 25th anniversary of her enthronement in 1923. However, even during her reign, the tiara was described as simply too cumbersome to wear in public. The sheer volume of the stones made it an incredibly heavy, unyielding structure. The parure sat largely unworn for years until it was inherited by Queen Juliana in 1962. Faced with a magnificent but entirely unwearable historical artifact, she took a very bold step. She took the jeweler's saw to the unwieldy tiara, completely dismantling it to create several smaller, modern sets of jewelry for her daughters. From those historical stones, Princess Beatrix received a pair of large figure-8 diamond earrings and a massive pair of sapphire and diamond earrings, which are now frequently worn by Queen Maxima. Princess Margaret also received beautiful sapphire earrings and a brooch from the dismantled pieces. The original necklace from the parure eventually found a new life as well. In 2009, elements of it were combined with another sapphire necklace to create the Dutch sapphire necklace tiara. Dismantling such a grand piece of history is always a little bittersweet. It means we will never again see that imposing 1901 tiara exactly as it was gifted. But on the other hand, because of Queen Juliana's daring decision, these magnificent stones are actually living and breathing in the modern world, catching the light at state banquets rather than lying dormant in a dark safe. Though I have to confess, looking at the sheer scale of the original parure, I honestly have a strong feeling that if it had survived to our days in its original giant form, the incredible Queen Maxima would have pulled it off with absolute brilliance. It is always a comfort to know that historic stones are still in the family today, even if their original setting was altered. Sadly, not every massive royal necklace had the luxury of staying safely within a royal vault. Just look at the story of Grand Duchess Victoria Melida's sapphire parure. In 1909, after years of exile following a highly controversial marriage, Victoria Melida, often known as Ducky, and her husband were finally allowed to return to Russia. Her mother, Grand Duchess Maria Alexandrovna, knew exactly what this highly scrutinized return required. She wrote to her other daughter that it was absolutely necessary in Russia for a Grand Duchess to produce fine jewels to establish her status. To ensure Victoria Melida would outshine the rest of the court, her mother gifted her a spectacular, heavy sapphire and diamond parure, a breathtaking set featuring the Irish shamrock, Scottish thistle, and English rose motifs set among massive blue stones. Her mother even had a special case made specifically for the massive sapphire collar and handed it to her daughter in Paris before she left for St. Petersburg. And the strategy worked flawlessly. Contemporary accounts describe Victoria Melida at the Russian court looking magnificent, wrapped in a heavy train of cornflower blue velvet, with the dazzling sapphire necklace and tiara fully embodying the required imperial splendor. But this dazzling display of unshakable power was short-lived. When the Russian Revolution erupted, that very wealth became a liability. The family had to flee, and these massive, heavy stones were secretly smuggled out of the country. Jewels that were specifically designed to dominate the grandest imperial banquets of Europe were now being carried across borders inside children's plush toys, simply to ensure a family's survival. Faced with the harsh financial realities of life in exile, the grand sapphire and diamond necklace, along with its matching stomacher, were eventually sold off to Cartier in Paris. Today, their exact fate remains entirely unknown. It is a familiar story for royals forced into exile. When the wealth is gone, the heaviest, most valuable necklaces are usually the first to be sold. We saw this exact scenario play out with Princess Neslishah's Ottoman diamonds. The diamonds in this late 19th century parure have a legendary, centuries-old origin. They are said to be the very stones that Empress Catherine I of Russia gave to the Ottoman Sultan Ahmed III in 1711 as a peace offering to end the Pruth River campaign. Generations later, these historical tinted diamonds were set into an exquisite cascading necklace, earrings, and a brooch. The parure was eventually given as a wedding gift to the beautiful Ottoman Princess Neslishah when she married into the Egyptian royal family in 1940. She wore the magnificent necklace flawlessly, frequently styling it as a brilliant headpiece during the early 1950s when she served as the First Lady of the Court in Egypt. But the monarchy was abolished. The family was arrested, eventually released, and forced into exile in Paris. The magnificent Ottoman diamond parure had to be sold, going under the hammer at Christie's in 1963. The good news is that, unlike many large royal pieces, this necklace doesn't seem to have been dismantled right away. It actually resurfaced intact at Sotheby's in 2011, and then again at the Magnificent Jewels auction in Geneva in 2016. Today, this colossal necklace is hidden away somewhere in a private collection, far from the public eye. It's always a bit sad when a historic piece disappears into a private vault, but at least we know it is still out there somewhere. The same cannot be said for one of the most astonishing necklaces in the Russian imperial collection, the Romanov sapphire esclavage. Created by the court jeweler Duval at the very beginning of the 19th century for Empress Maria Feodorovna, it was a piece of unbelievable, almost intimidating proportions. The necklace was crafted in the en esclavage style, featuring multiple swag chains arranged in rows, holding 16 massive sapphires. The central stone alone was an irregular cabochon weighing an astonishing 159 carats. It was a piece of sheer, unapologetic excess, last owned by the Dowager Empress Maria Feodorovna before the Revolution. But do you know what the most astonishing part of its story is? When the Bolsheviks were cataloging the confiscated Russian treasures after 1917, they evaluated this necklace and were completely bewildered by its heavy, overwhelming design. The commission officially decided that the piece lacked taste and harmony, and as a result, they actually made a historical mistake. They incorrectly dated the necklace to the late 19th century, failing to recognize its true early 19th century origins. This so-called tasteless masterpiece, which was so huge and complex that it confused its appraisers, was captured in that famous black and white photograph resting on a table alongside other Romanov treasures. After that, it vanished without a trace. Because of its incredible size, it was almost certainly broken up and sold off stone by stone. But magnificent jewels do not only disappear during the chaos of revolutions. Sometimes, the most heartbreaking dramas unfold right in our own time, within the halls of the world's most heavily guarded museums. In 1810, Emperor Napoleon presented his new bride, Archduchess Marie-Louise, with a breathtaking emerald and diamond parure created by the celebrated jeweler Nitto. It was a masterpiece of true imperial scale. After the fall of the French Empire, the set remained with Marie-Louise and was passed down through generations until the 1950s, when it was eventually sold to Van Cleef and Arpels. The magnificent diadem from the set originally held 79 of the highest quality Colombian emeralds. The jewelers famously removed those historic green stones, selling them individually to clients, and replaced them with Persian turquoise. That turquoise headpiece now resides safely in the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. But what about the massive necklace and earrings from that same parure? In 2004, the Louvre Museum acquired them for 3.7 million euros, the highest price ever paid by a museum for individual pieces of jewelry at the time. Displayed in the magnificent Galerie d'Apollon, the heavy, imposing cascade of pristine emeralds seemed to have finally found a safe haven. Even though the necklace had essentially become a museum exhibit and lost its original purpose, to actually be worn, there was still a comfort in that. At least any of us could travel to Paris, walk up to the glass case, and admire the sheer scale of Napoleonic splendor with our own eyes. Sadly, that is no longer possible. Just recently, in 2025, the necklace and earrings were stolen right from the Louvre. It's a real shame, because we all know how art thefts like this usually end. Such large, instantly recognizable historical stones are practically impossible to sell intact on the open market. The only way to make a profit from a piece like this is to take the emeralds out of their original silver and gold settings, perhaps recut them, and quietly sell them off to private buyers. We might someday see a new piece of jewelry pop up at an auction featuring these very emeralds, but the original necklace itself is almost certainly gone forever. It is just incredibly sad to think that a masterpiece that survived the fall of the French Empire and centuries of changing fashions ended up being quietly dismantled in our own time. Looking at all these magnificent royal necklaces, I have to confess, I do feel a slight pang of nostalgia for those bygone eras, when adorning oneself with truly massive grand jewelry was simply the norm. It is a pity that not all of these breathtaking necklaces survive to our days, and that some are now locked away in private collections, completely hidden from our view. But I am so glad that we still have many surviving examples that continue to be worn and continue to delight us. It is such a joy to admire them, not just resting statically behind museum glass, but exactly where they were always meant to be, on royal women, out in the real world, catching the light in motion. I have a question for you. How do you really feel about these incredibly massive, oversized necklaces? If you had unlimited access to any jewels in the world, even the ones lost to history, which of them do you think you could actually pull off with confidence? And I don't mean just physically carrying the weight. I mean psychologically, without feeling overwhelmed or like it's simply too much, but truly owning the piece and feeling proud to wear it. Or maybe there is one specific necklace you would love to try on for just a single evening, simply to experience that incredible grandeur and enjoy the moment? If you enjoyed this journey, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next story. Thank you so much for watching and for spending this time with me. Because in the end, jewels may be silent, but their stories are not. And they won't fade away as long as we keep telling them. See you next time!